Hi, it's Katura again with SISU Biz, and I have got Carol from Specialty Events on today. And welcome, Carol, to SISU
Thanks for having me.
Biz.
Great to be
um,
here.
Yay! And so, just to kind of explain, I know I haven't told you a whole lot about what SISU is, but our family is Finnish, and in the Finnish culture, SISU is kind of roughly translated means strength in the face of adversity. So it's really a part of the Finnish culture to the extent that they feel like it's a part of who they are as people. So what we thought was kind of a cool way to share a little bit of our heritage. And you can actually see, so this is my husband here. He's what we like to call a Finn. I even have a mug that says, you can't buy happiness, but you can marry a Finn. And that's kind of the same thing.
Aw,
So,
that's
so
great.
that's what I did. So that's my husband there. And then these are the twins, Jacob and Haley. They're my oldest. And this was at Jacob's wedding. So that's his wife, Justice. They now have two little boys. And then this is my son, Jared, 16 and on the roads now. So that's always fun in this icy weather. First
Wow.
winter on the roads. So far, he's doing really well. And then Kaya is 14, and Thea, the little one over here, she is my youngest, and she's 10. So
Aw,
it,
beautiful.
so it's really just a way for us to kind of celebrate, that Sisu spirit that we see in others. And, I thought it was really interesting because you and I were actually recently, our businesses were kind of spotlighted in a Detroit Free Press article together. And that's kind of
Mhm.
how we came to know each other a little bit.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about specialty events and what your business was before the pandemic to what really gave you the inspiration to do what I think many would call impossible, which is why I called this one the impossible mindset, to kind of reinvent yourselves. So tell me a little bit about what you guys did before and how that's changed.
Sure. So we are a national special events company, business special events. So meetings, conferences, trade shows, any sort of event with a business purpose, we manage. And we manage events in all 50 states. And I started the company almost 30 years ago. But primarily, we were a live events company. That's what we did, in-person events. And obviously, that's changed. Um, Event management has a lot in common with live theater if you think about it, because there are things that happen organically and outside your control when you're on stage or you're at an event, and you just have to roll with it. That's what our event planners do. We assess, we change course, and we move on. So it's in our nature to pivot. But this pandemic pivot obviously was, on a much larger scale. We were not only changing what we offered as a business, how we did our jobs, we relearned our profession, and we're doing this at the same time, obviously, that everyone's personal life is completely upended because of the pandemic. So it was difficult to focus, but I just kept saying that, at the end of the day, when the dust settles, we're going to be the ones left standing. We're smart, we're strong, and we can do this. But at the same time, sure, I will admit the imposter syndrome was very real. There are times at the end of the day, I thought, I know my staff can relearn their job, but can I, right? But you just kind of just keep going. That's what event planners do. We roll with it.
Yeah. So you guys you've been training. I mean, as event planners, that's kind of cool. So you guys feel like you've kind of been in training for the pivot because
Yeah.
I mean, I showed you that picture of the wedding. We had a plan going in and it changed every second because it was just
Absolutely.
things happen. I always say life happens. When we're
That's right.
planning, life is just kind of taking its own course. So you guys were really almost like prepared for this to be able to just pivot and change. And you just applied what you do for events to your business.
Exactly. Yep.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. So
Yeah.
now here's, the other thing is you really had to because it wasn't just you, and you said that you felt like your team was prepared for it, but you had to get everybody on your team kind of in this. So like one of the quotes that I liked about Sisu was, it's like a metaphorical shot in the arm that allows the individual to do what's impossible. And I love this quote. I think this is a quote from you, correct? It became legally impossible to do our job. I had
Yes,
anticipated all kinds of things happening to my company, but never that we would not be permitted to gather people in a room. That was not on my radar. So
absolutely.
that's actually a quote from the, and this is actually your team, yes?
Yeah, some of my supplier team and then my team sort of in the background because of course we have to be socially distanced even with virtual events. So
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, I mean, I think that it's such an amazing thing that your team, so how did you do that? How did you get them on board with because they had to do some additional training too, right?
absolutely. So just to give you a sense of where we were, so I'm typically a really positive person. People who know me know that, but I'm also a realistic person. And when the pandemic hit, there were people in our industry that kept saying, this is going to be short term. We're going to be back to doing events in the spring, maybe the fall. And I just didn't believe that would be the case. And I remember very clearly having a meeting with my senior leadership team early on and saying, we're done. I mean, events are done for 2020. We need to start thinking about how we're going to build a bridge to 2021. So, with that in mind, I made some really difficult decisions. I had to lay off a ton of amazing people, but I promised them that it was my goal to kind of keep the company and the brand alive and then bring them back when things improved. So the first round of PPP enabled me to do that for some of them. And then what I did then is I split them up into teams to identify new lines of business. Because even though you couldn't gather people in a room, there was a business purpose to our events, and that client's business purpose still existed. So we had to figure out how to meet those needs. So we looked at a lot of different possible sources of revenue. And in the end, we really agreed that together that going all in on virtual meeting design was the right thing to do. So they were all part of that decision, and that helped. And then when I made that decision, I then paid for all of us to get trained and professionally certified in virtual event and meeting management because I knew that even if I couldn't keep them on once the PPP funds ran out, that I was kind of setting them up for success as independent contractors. So they helped decide where we would pivot, and then they appreciated the training that they received, I think. So
Yeah. So that's,
that helped.
and it's funny because I talk to people and I think one of the main things that I hear that seems to be kind of a trend with people that have pivoted and kind of persevered is, there's always the chance of failure. And one of my favorite things is I don't mind failing, but I want to fail forward. Um,
Jacob Brown says that. A friend of mine, Jacob Brown, if you've seen
that's
him on
awesome.
LinkedIn.
I don't know where that came
I
from.
love
I'm
him.
like, I don't know where I heard this, but I loved
Yep.
it. I just thought
Yeah.
failing forward, what a cool concept because so many of us, are taught like, oh, you don't want to fail. Failure is bad. Failure is this. And I think to me, no, failure is good. Failure means I'm trying. Failure means
Yeah.
I've said, here's an obstacle. I don't know how to get over it, but I'm going to try to get over it. And if I fail,
Right.
I can't even tell you. I don't even think it's probably in the hundreds. It's probably in the thousands, the amount of times that I've failed. But I feel
Absolutely.
like as long as I'm failing forward and trying, then I learn it's like learning. You learn from
Right.
those failures and you just continue to
Absolutely.
kind of to move it. So it's so amazing to me that because I kind of look at it the same way that you want your business and your team, you want them to grow as just being affiliated with you. And it sounds like you really took
Right.
that concept and said, you know what? I'm going to give them that additional training. And if nothing else, they're going to have that additional training to take with them.
Exactly.
And that makes me, I mean, I love that because it's just so, that's how we grow as a community, just as a community of people of just saying, you know what,
Absolutely.
it's good for the business, but it's also good for the people because you get so attached to them, right? The members of your team, they're
Their
like,
family.
they
Right.
are, you
Absolutely.
spend
Yeah.
so much time with them that they do become like members of your family and you want to see them grow and develop. So
Yep.
they just kind
And
of
even
embraced it. Huh?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And even our extended team, because we have so many people going through this training, we got a discount. So I then offered that discount to even sort of the people who already were independent contractors with me. And I said, if you want to stay in this business, you're going to need to learn virtual events. And so if I can help you, take this discount, let's see where we go from there. So
That's amazing. And it reminds me of one of the first podcast, or I think the first podcast that I did was with a guy named Matt at Bobcat Bonnie's. The food is amazing there. And they've been a client of ours for a really long time. Actually, when all they had was the Detroit location, we
oh
started
yeah,
out with them. And so I've known Matt for a long time. And, one of the things that we talked about when I had him on the podcast that I didn't even know was, I said, what do you do when people, other restaurants come to you and ask you about these outdoor pods that you've created, kind of with his
Hmm.
out of the box thinking. And he's like, oh, I have a whole file. I just send it to him. It tells him all the vendors, what I paid for it. And I was like, so many, even especially like restaurants would be, oh, I'm not going to I'm going to hold that close to the vest.
Yeah.
And I was so curious to be like, why would you do that? And he's like, well, I want to, it's, if some people are going to go there and they're going to eat, but then they're going to see that restaurant, they're going to come see my restaurant, and it's going to raise, kind of all boats. And I just thought that that was such a cool concept. And it sounds like you kind of have that same.
Yeah, and it's not just me, it's really everybody in the events industry. It's been amazing. That's the one good thing to think to come out of this pandemic. But almost from the start, we had competitors in our industry just getting together. I was in this program called the Situation Room, and it was like 6 agency owners from across the country, and we would meet. I think it was bi-weekly in the beginning of the pandemic, and it was just instinctually we all just shared the real story. It was like, this is where I'm at, this is where I want to go, and it was so refreshing. I mean, even competitors in my own area, we kept in touch, we talked, we shared. It was amazing. I hope that that lasts. When the pandemic is over, because I think it was really a positive thing to come out of it.
Yeah, and I'm kind of a glass half full kind of a person myself. So, I think that that there are some, to be able to see like the creativity and the
Yeah.
determination and the togetherness. People helping, like we were just talking about, Texas, and seeing all the people that really the neighbors. I saw a video of these
Right.
neighbors like going, they had a bunch of wood and they were like driving door to door and giving wood out to their neighbors. And I was like, that's what you want to
Yeah.
see. You want to see that willingness to help your neighbor. And I think that when
Absolutely.
it extends in the business world, I think that's amazing too, especially amongst competitors. So, and this is kind of, for me, this was your SISU spirit at work. And I liked this. This was actually the title of the article that we were in together. Your section of that was change your parish. And that's kind of how you saw it, right? Like you were like, we've got to change, or we're
Absolutely.
done. Um,
Yeah, that was a fun event. That was our Center for Creative Studies, or College for Creative Studies event. Yeah, it's the truth. Change your parish, and it's so many businesses had to do that, right? We were just one small example.
yeah, yeah. So then now last question. So what is because obviously when we were in that article together, I kind of looked at what you said in the article and looked at your business, and we'd never had a chance to meet prior to that, but I immediately was just struck by, this is somebody that has that Sisu spirit. So for me, you got Sisu, as I like to say. I think it's like the got milk kind of a kind of a thing. And I love this because it's the fist kind of punching through that brick wall, that obstacle. Um, and it's funny because you'll see like the SISU Biz, see that painting back there is actually the 14-year-old did that for me. And it's about that leaf growing through that stump of the tree. And it's just that perseverance. So what for you personally is kind of the key to your perseverance? So where you just get that grit.
um, Wayne Gretzky. So I'm going to paraphrase this, but he had this great quote. He said, great hockey players skate to where the puck is going, not where it is now. And I think that's always what I've done in my career as an entrepreneur, is to really look down the road and say, what's going to be needed at that point? What's going to make sense at that time? And, as you mentioned, I mean, as a business owner, my head's always full of what if scenarios. But I'll admit, I never said, what if I wake up one day and what I do for a living suddenly becomes illegal, right? I did not see that coming. So all I could do was just kind of look to see, where is our industry going down the road? What are people going to need? And I think virtual meetings really is not a temporary fix. It's something we went on all in on, because they're going to be around for years and years to come. I think people have had a year to get comfortable with them, and the technology is improving. And for some events, it's really cost effective. So I just try to look down the road. It's like someone said, or I love the quote, don't start a business, solve a problem, right? What's needed, and then you try and skate to that.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of another quote. It was, again, I'm so bad at remembering who says these things, but it was in a sales class that I took once when I was probably in my 20s, low 20s. and it said, if you see John Smith through John Smith's eyes, you'll sell John Smith what John Smith buys. And it always kind of stuck with me as a way to say, you know, you need to find out what that person needs and sell to that. And that sounds like what you do. And my mom is going to love that because my mom is a huge Wayne Gretzky fan. So
Oh, good.
he's going to watch this and be like, Wayne Gretzky, yay. That's a great quote. So final thing before we end here, if people want to get a hold of you and they want to help, you know, they want your help to plan an event, how do they reach out? How do they find you?
SpecialDevents.com. Special D as in Detroit, events.com.
There you go. Awesome. Thanks, Carol, for being on here. And we'll see you next time on SISU Biz. Let me stop there.